Slava, do you have introductory slides?
Well, not really. I think I can just tell a little bit what we're going to present here, and you can start done, right?
Okay.
Okay, so this session is about DevOps issues and about all installation problems, and we're going to discuss how to deploy the Dataverse, how to use automated testing tools, and you will get some kind of knowledge about Vagrant, Ansible, Docker, Kubernetes, Jenkins, and all these kind of tools that you can probably run for production or non-production environments. So, Don, please tell us a little bit history of DevOps in Dataverse.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending the Deployment and Automated Testing session. My name is Donald Sizemore. I work for the Odom Institute for John Crabtree, and I'm just going to give a little flyover of the various deployment options that are available and some of the automated testing that we have in place now. And then I'll turn back over to Slava, who will talk about where we want to go. The first public automated deployment option that I'm aware of is appropriately committed by Phil Durbin. It's 6 years old. It runs locally on any desktop computer. It's a wrapper for VirtualBox, and it can call other scripts, including Ansible. I don't know how many people use it regularly, but I use it nearly daily in testing. All of these, by the way, are available on GitHub publicly. There is a Puppet module. It was contributed in the Dataverse 4.3 era, as you can see, but if you go and look at the code, there is a basic framework in place to handle initial installation and sequential upgrades. So if anyone would like to update it for 4.20 and 5, the code is there. Dataverse Ansible, well, my name is on it, so I don't know how much I can say about it, but it will deploy into a VM on the bare metal EC2 instance within Vagrant. And there are a number of what Ansible calls group vars that a user can turn on and customize. It's right now a sort of a one-shot operation. I've accepted pull requests to make it more idempotent in the way that people want Ansible roles to be idempotent. And there's also an OS X developer version contributed by Bill McKinney. It's on GitHub as well. I believe the first Docker containers by chronology were contributed here for the AWS CloudFormation repo. They paved the way for work that Phil Durbin did with Red Hat on OpenShift. And if you ask Phil about the history, he'll say, well, Pete told me that I should put all this in Docker containers and make them available outside of OpenShift. So here we have Pete Meyer's first Docker all-in-one, which was, I believe, intended originally for testing. I know it was used heavily by NDS Labs for a project that we were working on, and it is still being currently updated, so you can call it today. And Oliver will talk much more about this later, but I believe this is going to be the bulk of the session today, Dataverse and Kubernetes. As Oliver puts on its webpage, it aims at day 1 deployment and day 2 operations. So I'm going to let Oliver talk about it much more. By way of integrated testing, we do have jenkins.dataverse.org. You can see the various jobs and some of their states whenever I took that screenshot, maybe a month ago. Each time there is a commit to the develop branch. Each time a pull request is submitted, each time a number of things happen, these jobs fire, and the unit tests and integration tests run end to end with automated reporting. This is a more or less a current state of the code coverage. The unit tests get us at 20%. With integration, it's more like 40%. The number always goes up a little bit, so that's good to see. And in conversation during the session, it is important to keep an eye towards security, and we have a number of people who would like to talk about the performance of Dataverse in either the compilation, installation, or the use phases. So that was my flyover. I'm going to give the screen back to Slava, and I believe Pete Meyer is up next to talk about his work on Dataverse Docker.
I am, but I'm up next, but is Slava co-presenting something before I dive in? Slava, I can see your mouth moving, but you're muted, so I can't hear you.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So I think it was great introduction from Don, and I know, Pete, you did a lot of investigations, and basically you was one of the first people that introduced Docker, right, to Harvard group, and yeah, it would be nice to share some insights and yeah.
Okay. Yep. I'm happy to dive in. It's just the way Don was saying it, it sounded like you were going to talk some slides too. So.
Not really. Not now.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I will. Let's see. I do have a very minimal set of slides that I can put up. Let me switch to those. They are. Where do I have them? Share screen. All right. Everybody can still see okay?
Yes.
All right. So my name's Pete Meyer. I'm from Harvard Medical School. I was involved. I'm a structural biologist by background, not an IT person by background. And Don and Slava asked me to talk a little bit about Docker and Ansible and Dataverse. So I will roll on ahead. Why? So as far as why does a biologist care about DevOps? We want to conserve human time. We want to solve the problems once rather than, oh, I fixed that thing, I got to go back and refix it again. And to try to manage the complexity budget where, okay, something is broken. You know, can I narrow down which part of the whole big system it is versus just the, you know, is it a small piece that's broken or I have to look at the whole thing that's broken? And the blue sky goal for where I got into this was the project that we were collaborating with the Dataverse team on, and we made some very good progress towards that, was we wanted to have Dataverse be able to integrate with big data components. So if a structural biologist has a data set that's, you know, 300 gigabytes and 500,000 files, they can upload them without having Glassfish or now upcoming Pyera fall over. And we wanted to have the automated testing be able to say, yes, this is still working. No, this is not working. It was a nice goal. And my slides froze. Oh, there we go. So didn't quite happen, but we still made some useful progress. And Docker AIO is one component of that. So just a heads up, I have been somewhat out of the loop, and with 2020 and its assorted chaos, I may have been even further out of the loop. So if I say something and Don or Phil or Slava points out, you know, hey, we depreciated that thing a while ago and you didn't hear about it, just be aware that that may happen. And also, if the approaches that I've taken have rarely been, let me use this technology, you know, there's new technology to make life easier, let me use it in the ideal way. I've tried to focus on, you know, I can use this technology to make incremental improvements and, you know, not necessarily redo the whole stack. And there's also the caveat, sometimes the problem is Pete can't figure out the other approach. So, sorry, I've got a little bit of lag on the slides. So for Ansible and non-interactive installation, I'm not going to say too much about this. This was more, we have in-house Ansible, which is tied in with a configuration of about, I don't know, 20 other different types of systems. And so this was kind of independent evolution of Don Sizemore's great Dataverse Ansible. And one of the problems I ran into was that how do you install Dataverse in a way that doesn't involve you typing things into the installer? Don solved this by going inside the installation script, and I looked at it and I was impressed that he could make it work and not confident I could make it work. So made the minimal possible changes to the install script to take some configuration files, committed it back. That's how open source is supposed to work. And now it's usable in other places. One other thing that we ran into with Ansible is, all right, I'm making curl calls, I'm making database calls. How does Ansible know that? Well, you dump a log file. If the log file exists, you assume it worked and iterate on that. Skipping ahead, I hope. Oh, sorry, I am having lag with the slides. So Docker AIO, it stands for Docker all-in-one, and the goal of this is for integration test setup. And this is, in a way, a sense, sometimes the problem that's being solved is Pete can't figure out how to solve the problem. Phil has a great guide for how to set up running the integration tests on a Mac and to integrate with NetBeans. And I couldn't figure it out, but with Phil's help, I was able to get a setup working in this Docker image, which then you can move it between a desktop Mac or a Linux machine, and you can still run the integration tests. If everything is working, which as of this morning, it was still working on develop, then you run a script to build it, you run a script to test it, and you have your integration test results. It doesn't give you code coverage in its current state, and it completely ignores everything that Docker tells you about best practices. So you can also use it for a development environment or for a regular testing the normal installation script, but those were kind of just bonuses. One thing about this was that it's not intended to be like, I'm going to push this to a Docker repository and have somebody deploy it for production. If you wanted to do that, you'd have to do some more work, or better yet, you should not listen to me talk about Docker for production. You should listen to the other folks who are going to be talking about that later. But to build on that, the goal was we wanted to be able to test these big data components. So there's another, Docker DCM is basically extend Docker AIO, but add a little bit of configuration for, this is a Dataverse install in a Docker box, configure it to talk to the big data components, and then use Docker Compose to set these up on your development machine. So you've got the same production-like environment that you can do development and testing on. And that should pretty much be it. I think I am probably at time, so I will skip my extra thing about other stuff that I learned and applied to the DCM itself. So.
Okay. Thanks, Pete, for a great presentation. And for me personally, it was kind of mystery why it's called Docker AIO. But now I understand. So thank you.
Yeah. I guess I did a bad job documenting that then.
Well, I would say for me, when we started SESDA project, where we tried to create first Docker images, and we started to split Dataverse architecture into components to get Solr and Postgres and Glassfish and different components. It was basically our reference, your work on Docker AIO, and this is how we managed to get it done properly, I would say. So
excellent. That is.
It was our initial point, yeah. So thanks.
I remember having some conversations with Phil, both in person and IRC, and it's, the design objective of Docker AIO was when the better thing is available, you move to the better thing and you get rid of it. So I'm glad to hear that it's been helpful for making better approaches happen.
Yes, thanks to you. And Phil, so probably Phil can even tell even more about how he managed to get into Docker and other DevOps tools.
Yeah, absolutely. This is my first time, believe it or not, sharing my screen. So thank you for the opportunity. Oh, I'm on page 12 of that. Okay, I'm going to back up. We're going to go through my slides backwards if I can move them. Here we go. Okay. All right. Hi. So my name is Phil Durbin. I'm one of the developers for Dataverse. Let me start my clock. Good. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you guys about DevOps stuff. I guess first I want to say that deployment is super important. Like, maybe that's obvious, but if software is hard to deploy, people don't run it. So if you find pain points in deploying Dataverse, please let us know. Documentation is super important. If the docs are weird or hard to follow, please open a GitHub issue and open a pull request. We're happy to coach you through the process. So thank you for coming to this session and caring about deployment. Yes, so oh yeah, and I wanted to just kind of buzz through, it's actually the same slides. These are Don's slides. Don, I'm sorry, I stole your slides. I just thought maybe I'd give a little bit of like color commentary of these slides along the way. So the Vagrant stuff actually dates back to before Dataverse 4, because when I was interviewing for the Dataverse job 7.5 years ago, I was like, how do you put this stupid thing together? You know, like, I went, what did Glassfish, all this stuff. So I hacked together a Vagrant file in those days. That I'm like, great, you can just type Vagrant up, and now you have a dev environment. To be clear, Vagrant is just for dev, not for production. But let's see. Yeah, so I carried that forward into Dataverse 4. I'm surprised that Don is using this thing nearly daily, because there's also, maybe he means it's either 2 Vagrants. There's one in his Ansible code also. It is definitely useful for development. So that's what that is for. Oh, I think of Vagrant as sort of like executable documentation. Like, it's great to have the documentation, but my first time installing Dataverse, I was reading the documentation. I'm like, oh my God, like, this is a lot of steps, a lot of like steps before to get all the stuff set up, and then you run this Perl script. And I'm like, oh my God. So Vagrant for me is just a way to like get my hands around getting the thing installed in the first place. Yes, Puppet. So the pattern that you'll see is that people show up and they say, hey, how about if we install Dataverse with Puppet? And I say, sure, sounds great. And then I create a fresh, empty Git repo for them. And then they push all their code. And then they're happy, I'm happy, the community's happy. This was contributed, again, by Lucian Van Wel. And he also contributed the password complexity code to Dataverse itself, which is really cool. As was noted, this one's gotten a little bit stale, Dataverse 4.3, but it would be a great base for anyone, any Puppet enthusiast to jump in and take it from there. Ansible, oh my God. Don forgot to mention that his code here has been called a work of art. As it's been mentioned before, it's not idempotent, so you can't just like run the thing over and over, and I don't think it does upgrades, but it's really great for just standing up Dataverse on a CentOS box. And more recently, somebody, I forget his name, has been trying to contribute Debian Ubuntu support, so that's really, really nice. Okay. I forgot to mention back in the prehistory that before all these options, there were even other options. Like people were like, hey, can we get an RPM for Dataverse? Or Slava even said, can I get a VMware image to run Dataverse on? But now we have these nice modern Dockerized things instead. Okay, AWS, yes, so this was another one where Calvin, who goes by Telnorati, showed up in IRC and was like, I want to do this AWS thing. And I was like, great, here's a repo, go make it. This one is also a little stale, hasn't been kept up to date, but if people are really into cloud formations, it'd be a good choice. And I noticed Docker here earlier when Don was given this slide. I'm gonna close that window. Okay, hopefully that's a little better. And I thought, Docker, wait, it wasn't Calvin who first Dockerized Dataverse, it was Craig Willis. So I thought this is like Han shot first, right? It was actually Craig Willis who first Dockerized Dataverse. He was working for the National Data Service and has this cool workbench for like combining multiple services together, Dataverse being one of them. So if you want to play with Dataverse and iRoutes together, that was the vision of this thing. And yes, this work on Docker led directly into collaboration with Red Hat. This one has been super exciting at times, and other times you're just sort of waiting to hear, like, when is the work going to continue? I had an absolute blast working with Dan McPherson and 2 rounds of students from Boston University to get this thing working. But at the time, our Dockerization of Dataverse was not especially mature. And actually, if you look at Dataverse 5, well, it's not out yet, but you'll notice that I've removed all these docs from our guides because we haven't been keeping them up to date. We didn't update all these images for Pyera. We're not even pushing images to Docker Hub. We were doing it originally just to, like, test this stuff out, but I would say all this stuff is, again, a good base to start from. I would probably rebase everything off of more modern efforts from both Oliver and Slava if we want to breathe new life into this thing. I don't think I don't think it would be too much work. When I talk to Red Hat these days, what they say is they want an operator. And I know just yesterday or the day before, Oliver and I were talking about getting an operator for Dataverse Kubernetes. So that's the status of that one. Pete gave a great overview of Docker All-in-One and Docker DCM. So yeah, I like the Docker DCM approach a lot because in that case you have multiple services. Because increasingly Dataverse is not this standalone thing. You know, we need to integrate it with the DCM, the data capture module, or a whole slew of other services. That approach is good for development. And then longer term, I think we could focus more on, like, a Kubernetes strategy, having all these services right in Kubernetes. Yes, so that's good. Okay, so the spin up scripts. Okay, so what this is that, you know, the development team at Harvard, you know, we think about deployment and improving this stuff sometimes, but we are mostly working on features, bug fixes and stuff. But we had this need that we want to be able to show the design team especially some code that we're working on so that we can just have them click around and play around with the feature for real and then kind of give us the thumbs up, like, yeah, this is looking good, or no, send it back. You know, we're not going to even send this to QA yet. So we created a spin-up script. I saw Matthew on the list, participant list. He wrote most of this code. It's a shell script, but we had to make a decision actually between, are we going to run this thing on kind of in a more traditional way on an operating system like CentOS, or we're going to run this thing in Docker somehow. And at the time, and still today, I would say that the team is not super comfortable with Docker. So we decided to point the spin-up script at Don Sizemore's Dataverse Ansible code, which has been a huge win because the original bash script doesn't change much over time. All the evolution happens in the Dataverse Ansible code. So thank you, Don. He's been extremely responsive, and we get so much value out of that. And as was mentioned, that Dataverse Ansible code is now at the heart of our continuous integration strategy. So for every pull request, we're spinning up an AWS instance and installing Dataverse, the code under test, and getting results. Okay, it sounds like we're going to hear a lot about Oliver's Kubernetes stuff soon. I can't say enough nice things about this. And okay, so I only have about a minute left, but some crazy ideas. People like crazy ideas. I'm curious how people deploy Dataverse. So we have a spreadsheet already that we use to power the map of Dataverse installations. We could just have a column and people could just sort of declare, I use this or that, I don't know. It might be interesting to see how are people installing Dataverse. And then the bigger idea is demo.dataverse.org is just it's just the EC2 instance that has Dataverse installed on it. But again, we're living in more of this ecosystem these days. And so I think it would be super cool if we could power that service by Kubernetes and have a bunch of other services near it. So you can really get a more full experience of what Dataverse can do. And last things, I just wanted to kind of have some concrete takeaways that I tried to explain, like this is for dev, this is for prod or whatever. But if you really want like the IQSS supported, the Harvard supported way of installing Dataverse, you should follow the guides and all the steps that we document there. Everything else is community supported. So Dataverse Ansible is awesome for just getting Dataverse installed, get stood up on a new VM or instance or whatever. And then from there, you would upgrade using our normal release notes. And then I'm just plugging again Dataverse Kubernetes or Dataverse Docker from Oliver and Slava for the cool kids. If you're into Kubernetes, those would be great options to look at. So thank you. And I think I'm done.
Thanks, Phil. And we have some questions already. So I don't know who actually wants to answer about this question. Which is better choice, use Docker or separate installation of all components necessary for Dataverse? What do you think?
I think better for what is the follow-up question to that.
Okay, so
because it really depends what you're trying to do.
Okay, and this question is from Rashid IC, and can you elaborate a little bit? Okay, so he's not responding.
Hello?
But yeah.
My question is for Dataverse in production environment, which is the best choice? Is it to use Docker or to install all the prerequisites for Dataverse separately? And thank you.
Well, if you're having the engineering people to operate in a Kubernetes cluster, then using Docker, Dataverse on Kubernetes together with Docker would be a reasonable choice. But if you don't have that, just take the route of a classic installation.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for classic installation, you should actually have traditional like system administrators.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's another problem.
Pick your poison.
Wait, thank you.
And I would say you have option to install Dataverse from Docker, where everything it will be integrated in one Docker image. So it will be Glassfish and database and Solar. But also in Dataverse Docker module, we actually split. So we are running different containers for every component. And we're getting images from Docker Hub. So it should be up to date. And I think it's much more reliable than you will do exactly the same by basically updating the one container, one image.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next question. Dataverse operator, do you have already started the development or just planned for now?
I'll mention that later. So maybe.
Okay, so you have. Oh yeah, I see.
I'll mention that later.
You have slides. Good. So yeah, I don't see. Oh yeah. So are there performance benefits for traditional install with Docker install? Well, I can answer. So basically, if you have Kubernetes, you can scale it up both horizontally and vertically. So it's kind of a way how to scale it. But yeah, for Docker, it's basically just image. And this image will be just executed and it will be running container. And I would say it doesn't matter. Probably Oliver has another opinion about that. But
yeah, you might also apply a question back again, because it all depends on what kind of hardware you have around when you're doing a classic installation, for example, or what kind of cloud you're using, and what kind of or how much money you're spending for the cloud, and how much resources you're taking from them. If you're low on resources, well, you'll be in trouble anyway. So actually this boils down to what Slava actually said. It should be comparable, and in theory, running it on Kubernetes should be more scalable if you need scale. But if you're just a small installation, I don't think it doesn't make any difference.
Okay, and Don just elaborated that Dataverse uses Flyway in recent releases. So, okay, so next question from Yamil. Hi, Yamil. How are you? Can a very rough decision tree be created to explain the pros and cons? So, well, who wants to answer this question?
That's easy. Obviously, we could do that. I'm open to any suggestions. There is an extensive guide, and it would be a marvelous contribution to the guide if we have a kind of a decision tree for that. So if you're willing to do a pull request for this, I'd be happy to add it.
Okay, so yeah.
I think that's also an area where Phil's idea about personas might be something like that's not up in a decision tree thing, but are you a developer? Are you a sysadmin? Are you doing a production install? It's not in decision tree format, but if somebody was going to make a pull request, that might be a good place to start.
Yeah, and we do already have a choose your own installation adventure, so we can make it a longer adventure.
I've forgotten about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Did we cover the database question well enough? I know we mentioned Flyway in passing, but the question was actually, what about database upgrading options when we have Dataverse installed and in production for years? But I mean, Flyway isn't going to upgrade. Maybe, I think that's from Henry. You could expand a little more on what you mean, because Flyway isn't going to like upgrade Postgres from 9 to 10 or something. But I don't know if that's what's meant. But yeah, for day-to-day sort of like releases, we do have Flyway in place, which will automatically upgrade the database schema. So I hope that helps to elaborate a bit.
And it might help to ask Stefan Krasberger, who I saw earlier on that he's on the call. He just upgraded, I think, from 4.6, somewhere like that, to the latest release, and has really some great experience now what needs to be done for that with a production instance.
And Stefan, are you here?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, and if you have any questions on that regarding, it was not as tricky as I thought it will be. And Flyway was very helpful, and also the shell scripts to upgrade the database. Normally the Solr and Postgres changes are a bigger issue than the Dataverse upgrade. I had no problem with any Dataverse upgrade. I did like 23 version jumps. So Dataverse worked very well, but Shibboleth was very tricky for us, but that's a very specific issue. But in general, just ask me. Yeah, I'm from AUSTA, the Austrian Social Science Data Archive, and I will be anyway in the sessions in the next few ones. So just get in touch.
Okay, great. Thanks, Stefan. So do you have more questions? If I'm missing something. Oh yeah, Phil, there are a lot of requests to share Excel you just mentioned.
Yeah, I just linked to it. The GitHub project is called Dataverse Installations. And the idea with that whole thing is that we'll just keep the data in a Google spreadsheet, and there's a Python script to pull it down, and from that we create a map. But we could add more columns to that Google spreadsheet, for sure.
Okay, right. Okay, so let's move on. And now I'm going to tell something about Shock project we're working on. Let me try to share my screen. Okay, so first of all, Yeah, in Europe, we started to work on a European open science cloud, and this is a very ambitious project. And recently it was even presented by European Commission President Ursula von Leyen at the World Economic Forum. And I just wanted to show you what she said about this project.
Europe is going to co-create a framework to allow the use of these data. It should consist of a trust.
Oh, sorry. I'm really sorry about that. Yeah.
Europe is going to co-create a framework to allow the use of these data. It should consist of a trusted pool of non-personalized data that governments, businesses, and other stakeholders can contribute to. And thereby, we open up data as a resource for innovation and bring new solutions to the market. And our scientists are already beginning to do this. We are creating a European open science cloud now. It is a trusted space for researchers to store their data and to access data from researchers from other disciplines. We will create a pool of information leading to a web of research insight.
So after this nice introduction from our president, so I'm going to tell you about project we're working on. So it's called SHOCK, and we have 4 different communities. It's Daria, Clarin, Eris, and Sesda. And recently we joined EOSC Synergy project. So the idea of this project is just to create a data infrastructure, and all data should be shared in the same way, like Ursula just said. And after it will be established, this infrastructure will get network of Dataverses with central portal to host all metadata that we are going to harvest from different Dataverse nodes. So of course, to do that, we need to develop really good testing strategies. So we're going to use Selenium and Cypress frameworks for that. And of course, we are going to build unit tests, integration tests, and continuous integration deployment pipelines for all tools that we are going to deploy in this infrastructure. And all external applications should be deployed on Kubernetes, on the cloud, and with multiple languages support and maintenance. And of course, we should be able to deploy new Dataverse instances, thematic or by affiliation. So if some universities will come to us, we should be able to provide this service for them. So we are using Sesda maturity model to evaluate the maturity of Dataverse and all tools that should be connected as a services to our infrastructure. And like already said, for every single service, we are going to create unit tests, and all changes should be tested with Selenium scenarios. So according to this model, every service should be scored as high as possible according to own maturity. So before we'll start, you should of course understand, and you know that maintenance of distributed applications like Dataverse network is very expensive, and it's quite difficult to maintain, and you have to put a lot of resources in this. So of course, it requires the highest level of maturity and a lot of code coverage and functionality coverage. So writing those integration tests that will allow to test a system consisting of different services or various services is quite a challenge. And of course, it's almost impossible to run distributed services like that without help and support from community like Dataverse community. So we started to work on quality assurance as a community service, and we introduced to people a Selenium IDE that allows to create and replay all tests in browser. And the idea that all these shared tests, because we are going to share tests for all community members, they can be reused with the same data samples to test any repository running in a network of Dataverses in our case. So this idea was supported by community already, and we created first 12 tests, and we already published in the repository. So you can find it in Global Dataverse Consortium repository. And I think OSDA and other partners already started to create new tests. So this idea is kind of getting all maturity now, and it continues to grow. So this is example of Selenium site file, and basically just JSON, and it's quite easy to understand, and it's very easy to create this Selenium site file. You don't need actually any special knowledge to install Selenium IDE and to create your own test. It's quite easy process, and it's JSON that it will produce. It will be possible just to reduce all templates, all patterns from this file to create, let's say, tests for Python with PyDataverse and these other frameworks. And the most important thing that all those things is possible to integrate with continuous integration pipelines. So created once and using the same data, we are able to actually to evaluate different repositories running in different places, even in different countries. So our community-driven quality assurance plan is looking like that. Users can download test suite with all tests provided by community, and they can install Selenium IDE and create project and execute, upload all tests. And after Dataverse will be automatically tested, they'll be able to create their own test according to specific requirements that they have and share with other people from community. So more contributors will bring even more maturity of Dataverse services, and if we'll manage to deploy, and we already have some prototypes that allow to deploy everything with continuous integration deployment pipeline, we can guarantee that all Dataverses deployed in this way can be operating as we are expecting, without bugs and in the same way. So it means that Dataverse maintenance cost will start to drop down, and maturity of community in the end will mean that it will create even more maturity of services that we are providing in European Open Science Cloud. So just to provide a small example, so we have a lot of thematic services in EOSC, and of course, one of necessary components is multilingual support, and we are developing WebLate as a community service, and it should follow exactly the same rules as other services. So you probably know for different countries, it's quite difficult to maintain properties in different languages. So there is a repository created by Scholars Portal where we are accepting all these translations contributed by different partners. But however, it's very difficult to synchronize and maintain all translations without using some tool. And in our case, it's WebLate. And this WebLate should follow exactly the same continuous integration pipeline as Dataverse. And all properties should be managed in CI/CD as well. So this is example how it looks like. There are different languages, and after people will get notification about new release of Dataverse, in this tool you will get also alerts for translators. So they will just open this page and will translate new properties. And with continuous integration, it will be delivered back to repository, basically to GitHub. So other people from community will be able to update their own repositories as well. So this is just example how it looks like. It's very user-friendly, and it just shows, like in this example with Austrian German, it just shows English and national language fields that should be translated. So to summarize this, all external tools should follow exactly the same rules and policies, and everything should be updated in continuous integration pipeline. And the only challenge is just to create Jenkins jobs in continuous integration that will get all those language updates, will rebuild images, will upload sample data to Dataverse, and will run test packages and also integration tests. And after, it will be kind of green light. If everything is fine, it will go to Docker Hub and will get possibility to deploy Dataverse and other services on EOSC infrastructure. So for for other projects that we are running in European open science cloud, like EOSC Synergy, it's exactly the same situation. So we started to work on software quality as a service in other projects, and they will provide evaluation of every tool or external service deployed in EOSC, and they will actually produce badges if it's ready to be deployed on EOSC, yes or no. And this is our way to create, to add maturity and create really sustainable service. So now the question, can we manage everything to work together in this integration pipeline? And now Samuel Bernardo from LIP from Portugal is going to tell something else, Synergy.
Hi, Slava. Hi, everyone. Let me just share here my slides.
Oh, I will stop to share my
Yes,
screen.
yes, Slava. Thanks. So, I don't know if you are seeing my slides now. Sorry.
So we're seeing the.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will just do here a bridge from the Slava presentation. So here I'm going to give you a preview of the service quality assurance we are developing in EOSC Synergy European Union project. Our reference thematic service is the Warsica use case developed by LNEC in Portugal. I also have here mentioned to the more direct collaborators with the related work package involved in the following slides. There are others, but this is the ones I could put here. So a very big group.
So so it looks like the slides aren't advancing.
Can you see? I just changed the slides. Can you see the slide? I now passed it.
It looks like it's the first slide. Is everyone else seeing just the first slide?
Okay, let me.
Yeah, only the first slide.
Yep.
We don't see the presenter more. We see the presenter more, but not the presentation, not the slideshow more.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you should click on present.
Click present.
Yes.
That option in Zoom, you are telling?
Oh no, in your presentation in Google Docs,
yes.
just click on
the upper right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost there.
Let me
Great.
Getting cold.
Present. Just a minute.
Next to the yellow button.
Sorry, I'm not finding it in my. It is not from slides from Google. The option you are telling me.
Yeah. So what you want to do is you want to go to screen to share screen in Zoom, and
in Zoom. Okay, in Zoom.
Right,
okay.
and from that option you should be able to actually select the window that shows the appropriate slide right now. So you basically need to change the window that you're sharing.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
So it should be this. So are you seeing now another slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened. Okay. Sorry about
That's okay.
this. So now you see the slides changing? Are you seeing
Yes.
the slide changing now? Okay. So seems the right one now. Maybe I just start again. So I was giving you the preview of service quality assurance we are developing in the EOSC Synergy European Union project. And our reference thematic service is the Warsica use case developed by LNEC in Portugal. I leave here a mention from some of the collaborators that from the work package involved in the following slides. So let's start to introduce the consortium and do a brief presentation of the quality service assurance. So as you can see here, this project involves a wide collaboration between many countries in Europe with the coordination of Hypergrid. As you can see in the map, there are countries from the west to the east of Europe. Our project mission is to expand the European open science cloud capacity and capabilities by leveraging investments and existing know-how and resources of national digital infrastructures. So looking at now at this QA development process, we start to define the specifications referencing our previous work in software quality assurance in the Indigo project. The SQA baseline criteria provides a lightweight and practical approach to educate and ultimately achieve quality in the development of research software. It establishes the minimum viable set of quality requirements that shall be covered when tackling any software development project, but mainly oriented to research. Additional best practices and recommendations are also defined to increase the value, reliability, and interoperability of the final product. So, looking into our current project, we pretend to expand our previous work from software QA into service QA. Going to service quality assurance, we focus on all services components, aiming to automate the software integration process. The current baseline has been elaborated based on the first-hand experiences extracted from several European funded research projects for service provisioning, operation, and integration into large-scale production infrastructures. We aim to consolidate the quality guidelines as a reference point for current and future research infrastructures, setting a path for sustainability and knowledge transfer. This goal can only be achieved through an open and collaborative effort. That's why so many people here around this project. So, looking now into the implementation. So the service QA as a service is being designed towards automation, applying DevOps practices. For this, we use a YAML configuration file that is validated over a predefined schema translating the SQA baseline criteria. That is implemented using Jenkins scripted pipeline, dynamically creating the necessary stages to apply all required tests and interacting with GitHub. The software quality and service quality are represented in the pipeline with software testing followed by integration testing, as just Slava mentioned before, actually being a batch when fulfilling each required stage. So, sorry, here a problem to pass the slides. Okay, so now about the badges. Sorry here. So when a criteria is validated along the pipeline, a badge will be issued and associated with the service as a quality assurance certification. This will validate the quality criteria and verification mechanisms related to the software repositories and service instances to be integrated. In the next step, we need to service candidates to fill the form over the SQA as a service portal that is still in development. This provides a way to the interested users do a fast submission, applying the required criteria. The user will get a comprehensive report for the set of software quality criteria selected by the user. For current library milestone, we focus the development around the Docker Compose agent as a generic case, but we also pretend to provide Kubernetes agent. Current library architecture is modular and will easily support any required custom agent for the future. So now the question arises, why creating digital badges? Well, it will allow to give the interested thematic service users a way to evaluate the proper recognition of software and services, and also allow easier translation of the quality levels defined in EOSC and assuring the provenance of the badges certification. So I'm not bother you more with this kind of technical details, and so I will show you now the use case that we are trying to integrate. So just start to present the WARSICA itself, the thematic service. So WARSICA thematic service provides access to customized remote sensing services based on Kubernetes data. WARSICA current service implementations are determination of the coastal line based on water-land interface, detection of water bodies such as lakes and reservoirs in inland areas far from ocean's shore, and leak detection in irrigation nets. So the main services here from WARSICA are the web portal platform and the processing engine. The service components are programmed mainly in Python language and require additional services such as salary for task queue management using RabbitMQ as message broker, and uses PostGIS as database for now. So, sorry for this. So now questions arises here about how we start to review this project. So how can we automate the service test? How to deliver the software in an unknown environment? How to get the data fair compliant? And the service QA asks for some development work. So for this kind of service, we saw that they can use Docs automation tool as a build helper to run the required tests, create Docker images to allow better environment integration, and use Dataverse to keep data, assuring fair principles. So about the SQA integration with Jenkins. To use the SQA as a service, we need to create Docker Compose configuration file to deploy the service components. The code is automatically fetched from GitHub repositories, selecting the required branch or tag. The test environment are defined in Docs configuration file, and the dynamic stages will automatically run the required environments in the expected Docker containers. So now looking into the most relevant point here, the Dataverse repository that we select. So the initial evaluation of WARSICA service showed that it was missing several fair requirements, such as data missing global unique identifier, data stored in multiple places internal to the service and not accessible, inexistent metadata detailed provenance association, data access not following vocabularies that apply fair principles. Looking into the improvements, the required improvements. So what do we do? We look into Dataverse, and it was very helpful because The Dataverse provides the repository solution that complies with FAIR principles, define a Dataverse and associated persistent identifier namespace, associate metadata with the provided and produced data, use data commons to allow data sharing between all teams and projects, and also metadata have by default already a license associated, is publicly accessible, and the API also provides the guidelines for what is required. And this is awesome from our side. So looking into the code integration. So this also requires development efforts from EOSC team to integrate their code with Dataverse interface. The Dataverse REST API is a very important key that allows to easily run unnecessary operations, very useful to implement in any language, only being dependent with the provided interface without any library requirements. Easy to maintain EOSC code in parallel with Dataverse service updates, and also provides the feature required to share sensitive data. So now looking into the final remarks, our conclusions. So we just like Dataverse so much because it provides a fair repository with a thorough REST interface, open source software with open license, answers to public and private data. Other data commons is a very interesting feature that we would like to explore. Well, but since you are talking about fairness, let me be fair and mention some adoption hurdles also. So the learning curve is harder than expected, and additional tutorials, code examples, and workshops would be very enticing. So just like Phil mentioned, so maybe we need some more guidance about that, but I think there are many work we can do to just try to shorten this curve. And for persistent identifiers to be citable, it requires a fee and negotiation with a provider. But that is how the current business model works, unfortunately. So it is just a requirement, unfortunately. For this is just some kind of block adoption criteria. So, and now this ends my presentation. So I hope that you could attract your curiosity about our project. I would be glad with your questions or suggestions in the end. And thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Samuel. Thanks. And just to elaborate a little bit, Vorsica is just the first use case, and we have more than 10 thematic services. And the idea just to actually to learn how to build this integration, this continuous integration and deployment, both for Dataverse and thematic services and other services like authentication, federation, and this is basically our learning curve now. And that's something we started to do. So I don't see any questions yet. So probably Oliver can say something about Dataverse Kubernetes. Oh.
Just give me a second to put up my slides. All right, here we go. So thank you for having me. I hope you're still with us, and to make a connection to the historic paraphrasation that Don, Phil, and Pete gave us. I very much remember digging through Docker AIO and others like the OpenShift stuff to actually learn how does this Dataverse thing work inside, and how does this all connect to each other and get things going. For this little project here, this is about getting Dataverse into production on, well, let's call it a cloud. This mostly boils down to anything which is tagged under Kubernetes, be it OpenShift or any of the other commercial distributions of Kubernetes like VMware has now, and Azure, and all those big players. This project has been started at the end of 2018, when I was getting into the community together with some other things for changes in the core. And the basic motivation was like, whoops, why is this not working? Here we go. The basic motivation was how to get this online and running for our own repository. And I had the feeling that I would need to put this aside. And I had many discussions with Phil about this on ISC. And we actually chose to do a separate project, a side project, like it has been done before. Phil already showed us, and Don. So this is almost about, or this project is almost just about focusing on how to get this on Kubernetes, and not so much on how could we enhance Dataverse. Sometimes there is a connection in between, because sometimes you'll need things in Kubernetes done to get it deployed better. And then this has to happen in the core project. But most of the time it's IQSS focuses on the Dataverse core project, and this project is focusing on cloud enabling this project. So the basic message here is, this is a side project, but let's keep in touch and always talk to each other, try to learn from each other and understand what all the others might want to have or want to about their goals and what they want to do. And one of those, well, let's call it contracts, is this will not be a fork of the upstream. So I took the hard way of begging and talking and everything else to get this my changes in. I felt that was needed for getting this on Kubernetes, and I hope this is visible now. All of this should be community driven, about listening to each other. What do you need? And then afterwards trying to revolutionizing the Dataverse project together. And for that, I built some building blocks. I'll emphasize on the next slide. Well, there's one point left here which I want to highlight. The idea behind the project was always that it would be a good idea to allow for maximum customization and automation everywhere, because this is Kubernetes, and Kubernetes is a kind of new ecosystem, but well, the baseline of Kubernetes is you'll be very, very flexible in what you're doing. And this is all about automating things. So this project also should be about automating stuff and having it customizable on the other hand, because no cloud project is like the other cloud project. Let me see what else to say. Yeah. So I'm not going to talk about Kubernetes. I gave a very short introduction on Kubernetes when I was in Tromsø. You can look it up there. This is mostly about containing links to other places of where you can learn about Kubernetes. It's a huge thing. There's pros and cons, gains and losses, as always with technology. So I'll just skip that and directly head over to the blocks. First of all, our first building block is about getting container images that are, on the one hand, Kubernetes capable, like the Kubernetes stuff is managing things a bit different than you'll do when you're just using Docker or Docker Compose. So this should be back in your mind when you develop such a thing. And this is why there is now those two images, IQSS Dataverse K8S and IQSS Solar K8S. This is more or less all things you need for Dataverse wrapped in a box, or one for the application server and one for Solar. And this is also totally open. The Docker files are in the project. This is done via CI in the terms of building it, of updating it. The images are regularly, well, nightly, updated to the latest packages, etc., to have it updated in terms of security. And this is accompanied then by an extensive documentation, the Dataverse Cloud and Container Guide. This was created by me sideways from the usual and very, very great upstream documentation about user, admin, installation, etc. Because it felt kind of different. And I wanted to get things done quicker than going through all the Q&A stuff, and don't wanted to put too much workload on people not actually using all of this stuff. So this is for now, aside from things, but well, okay. And there are some written documents about container usage and cloud usage in upstream, but we're actually planning on moving all of this and replacing it with the Cloud and Container Guide here. So to have one place to run to. The third building object or building block is the Kubernetes objects, which is actually about running those containers, which are built in the other block, on your Kubernetes cluster. And this is written with customizability in mind. So this should almost support any use case you might come up with. As it's completely customizable. Mostly done as a declarative collection together with some maintenance tasks as imperative jobs. So very, very Kubernetes like how you manage Dataverse when you run it on Kubernetes. There's lots of room for improvement. For now, I'm pretty much the only guy behind this project, and I would love to have more contributions because, well, of course, there's things like enhancing the docs, but there's also a lot of more ideas like adapting for Dataverse 5. There has been requests, for example, by Slava, maybe we could use those images and run it with a Docker Compose. So let's think about that and talk about that. How should we do that? The operator has already been mentioned, and just recently I made up my mind and thought a bit about that, how to do that. And my idea is to create a Java-based operator here. There is a lot of operator stuff going on in the Kubernetes world, but this is mostly based on Golang. But I'm not sure I want that because I'm not a Go guy, but I'm a Java guy, and there are lots of other Java guys around. So maybe we should create a Java-based operator and reuse all the other very interesting operators that already exist for Postgres and Solr. Also, I introduced Scaffold, which is a nice tool, but well, maybe people are more attached to using Maven. So maybe look at what's going on in the Java world, for especially the Eclipse JQ project, which is all about getting cloud native Java into the world, and try to adapt to that. And making Dataverse cloud native, like so many things. I have a list. It's a very long list, so many ideas and so many options to participate in this and revolutionize Dataverse, where we don't have to contribute to the core project, which is just all about doing it on Kubernetes. So for now, there's two proudly users, which is us, Jülich Forschungszentrum, and the other one is Corona Y, which is run by Slava. And I'm very proud that this is kind of the first non-S user, and I hope this will be more in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. And yeah, I think we are doing a lot of interesting stuff, and it would be nice to get even more collaborators to help with it. So I see some questions. Well, about Arabic support. Phil, can you probably respond to it? So you already said something, but
oh yeah, yeah. Kevin and I were chatting with Rashid, and yeah, I agree that we probably need to do something within the core itself to make Dataverse support right-to-left languages like Arabic or Hebrew. But I still suggested create an issue over in the language packs repo. It seems like the right place to at least express interest in Arabic. and Michael Barson, I jumped in and said there's a Bootstrap CSS that helps with the right to left. So that sounds cool. While I'm talking, I spotted another question from Pete to Slava about Selenium. I don't know where it went now. I jotted it down as like how you plan to. Pete, if you're still here, maybe you can just say what you were thought. Oh, I got it. Or Pete, since you're here, why don't you go ahead and just say what you were thinking?
So I guess what my question is, if you've got Selenium, community source Selenium test scripts, are you worried about having the selectors break with changes to things like prime faces and Bootstrap? And like, have you thought about maybe doing some pull requests to do consistent div IDs to make the Selenium tests more stable?
Yeah, so for now, we will just create different branches for different versions. So all these Selenium tests will be version specific, but of course, persistent way just to do, like you said, pull request and to do it properly.
In regards to the selectors and the problems with prime faces and Bootstrap upgrades, we're trying to get a Bootstrap 4 upgrade into the UI and have that prioritized down the road. And because that is going to impact so much of the UI, there would be a great opportunity to build in stuff for Selenium testing, build in stuff for left to right language. A lot of that stuff is not going to be that simple out of the box right now, but because the impact of such an upgrade will have such a wide-ranging impact across the entire UI, there will be plenty of opportunity to sprinkle in improvements for these type of features to improve automated testing, to improve internationalization, accessibility, what have you. Everything will be on the table when you're really kind of reconfiguring the entire UI top to bottom.
Yeah, and that's a lot of work going through and doing all of that.
Yeah, I've kind of already started planting seeds on recruiting help for that.
Mm-hmm. And I see next question from Jim Myers about other Selenium tests, not only in GGCC REPA. So I think Stefan, can you tell a little bit about your extension, what you did? Do we have Stefan still on the call?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
What exactly should I?
Yeah, so you said you reused our tests and you extended functionality with new tests, if I remember correctly.
The whole Jenkins quality assurance issue. I used the basic work done so far about how you test different views, like the metadata view of a data set, for example, or the login, logout procedure, to have this common workflows for a user, but also for admins tested before you make an upgrade, because that's the proper way to do it. And I needed to do 23 upgrades, so I wanted to share time and just write the Jenkins, create the Jenkins tests and the Selenium tests and let them run each for every upgrade, which reduced the workload for one upgrade to around half an hour if there's just a Dataverse upgrade. And the basic idea was to test the most important functionalities of the front-end side, like is the amount of Dataverses still the same one as before the upgrade, so you don't lose Dataverses, data sets, or data files. But then at the end, I also wrote with PyDataverse some scripts to extract all the metadata information before the upgrade, write it in some JSON files, and then use this JSON information to write a bit more complete integration tests at the end. So far, it's only private in my GitHub repository. I will try to have a look on it in the next weeks. But this was the idea, to standardize it a little bit more. But I always say in this term, there is quite some work to do in terms of organizing which specific a requirement needs to be tested, in which context, by and how to, especially to write integration tests. To have just small unit tests is not the tricky, but often you need to register or log in before you can do certain things, like testing out permissions and restriction, user rights management stuff, which is critical, but also trickier. And one of the big issues, as Peter already said, is that the CSS broke. So it's not that consistent and stable as it would be great for to automatize tests, because the CSS selectors were breaking 2 times out of 23. So it was not a huge problem, but in terms of maturity and code quality, and also automatize things more in the future, this would be really helpful. And I try to share the PyTest scripts I wrote for that, and then it should be easier for others to do proper testing before and after an upgrade too.
And do you have some documentation for those tests?
Yeah, that was coding forensic code sprint kind of quality. I have no real documentation, and this is why I did not do it so far, because I would say I need 1 to 2 weeks until I can share it, and someone else can do it in a more easy way, without you just have to read the code and think about how I conceptualize testing. And that's a thing that needs to be written down, because you can have a lot of different strategies how you test something.
And I see a question from Peter. So he's asking how to upgrade Dataverse to a new version from 4.something with Kubernetes or Docker or other tools. So this is exactly what you just described with your automatic pipeline. You managed to do upgrades one by one, right? And so Peter, you can probably ask Stefan to share, and a lot of people I see already interested in your work.
Yeah, just get in touch with me. Maybe it takes a little bit longer for me to answer emails right now, because I'm on parental leave, so I have to care for someone else. But I try to be as fast as possible, and yeah, just right now I'm happy to help.
Okay, thank you very much. And yeah, let me check if we have other questions. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so
I'll just, Slava, just while we're here, I just want to mention one of the reasons I'm asking is because QDR is starting to ramp up to make some Selenium tests, and so we're looking for ones we can try out and sort of set up some internal infrastructure to run them, and then also looking, which ones are the ones we should be creating to push back out. So hopefully we'll be able to help contribute from the QDR side into this in the near term.
Oh, sounds great. Thank you. So we'll get even more Selenium tests very soon, right? Okay, so a question about Payara. Oh, Phil.
Yeah, I unmuted myself. So from our perspective, we did this big effort to get from Glassfish to Payara, and I guess I would love to hear from maybe Oliver or you or about like what does this get us? Because sometimes I get asked this question of like, we're doing these tech upgrades, but like, who cares, And like, obviously, from my perspective, like, you can never just stay on old software from years ago. So there's always the security angle. But what about like from the feature side? Like, can someone talk about like what the switch, and it might be painful for everyone to upgrade to Payara, but it's going to be worth it, right? Because they're going to get X, Y, and Z.
So are you talking about features in terms of deployment and DevOps, or
yeah, DevOps.
features?
So this is the DevOps session. Let's talk DevOps.
Yeah. Okay. Jim, you wanted to say something?
I'm done. So Oliver, did you have any thoughts on this, or?
Yeah, but I was a bit quick and interrupted Jim because the question was not clear to me.
Oh, I was just going into chat instead, but there's certainly things like the archiving stuff. When we tried to do that to the Google Cloud, there are conflicts with libraries back in Glassfish because it's using such old versions of shared libraries that Google can't deal with it. So as soon as Payara comes out, I should be able to push that over. And so there are things like that that I think are, you know, I've had a few times, and I can't, that's the one example I can remember, but other ones where we've tried to have something that QDR created that the only way to get it over is to replace a library deep in Glassfish and hope it's okay, right? And picking sort of an intermediate library version that's greater than Glassfish and still 10 versions back, you know, that we haven't been able to merge. So I think there are real features, and the one I just mentioned is one of them.
I think also the continuing issue of certificate stores and trust stores in Glassfish is, you know, it pops up at inconvenient times at irregular intervals. And presumably that's going to be less of an issue with an application server that is both newer and hopefully easier to update between versions of.
I'm coming up with...
came up recently.
I have another idea about what is Payara giving us. Is first, obviously this needs code changes, but at some point this will be available, like microprofile config API. Have it easier configurable when you're deploying it somewhere, especially when you're running it on containers. It's a hassle to deal with the JVM options right now. In container environments, would be much easier when we're heading for things like config API. Having the ability to do code changes to have a multi-server Dataverse, so having some kind of clustering via, for example, Hazelcast, which is already built into Payara and ready to use, more or less. So we could have a multi-instance and a much better horizontally scalable installation of Dataverse. For example, once again, running on Kubernetes, which is very easy, making it to scale to just fire up another 10 instances when you need them and putting them down when you don't need them anymore. And so many other places, like Gustavo mentioned, we're now in Java EE8, which is enabling us a lot more stuff, which is making easier for all of us when it comes to DevOps.
Yeah, thank you. Another thought I had was there's a monitoring API also out of MicroProfile.
Right, the Prometheus exporter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I just didn't know if people are excited about this or not, you know, because me with Dataverse on my laptop, I don't get super excited about it.
It's totally crucial for a production instance on Kubernetes.
Yeah, okay.
So just a time check. We're coming up on the end of the session. So Slava and Don, did y'all have final remarks on how to keep up with all this cool stuff we've been talking about?
Yeah, well, I think we just need to try all options and to go for best options. This is my remark. So for you, it can be different choice than for other people, depending from your requirements. And if you want to scale to build scaled infrastructure, you should go for Kubernetes. If you want to just to run Dataverse for 100 data sets, low size, probably more traditional way of deployment will be more suitable.
Cool. All right, folks. So I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting, and I believe the contact info was sent out in the email from last night. So definitely keep up with Slava and Don, and we can follow up with this group with further messaging about how to keep up with this stuff and all the stuff that we discussed. Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Great session. Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.